Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Bakken Center for Spirituality and Healing webinar series. I'm Dr. Mary Jo Kreitzer, the founder and director of the center. For more than 2 decades, we've been advancing health and well-being in people, organizations, and communities. We are very excited to be hosting as our speaker today, Dr. Huong Nguyen, who will share a presentation titled An Introduction to Mental Well-Being Lessons from the Years in Asia. According to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, 1 in 5 U.S. adults experience mental illness each year, and 1 in 6 U.S. youth age 6 to 17 experience a mental health disorder each year. At the Bakken Center, we know that mental health is a critical part of well-being, and we understand how conditions such as loneliness, depression, anxiety, and more can impact our relationships, our sense of belonging in the community, our safety, and our day-to-day emotional regulation. Today, our speaker, Dr. Huong Nguyen, will share some key findings, scientific and otherwise, from her years living in a Buddhist temple in a remote mountainous area in Thailand to conduct research. The findings are meant to be an introduction to how we can better understand and improve our mental health and well-being, and thus live a life with much less suffering. Dr. Huong Nguyen is a clinical associate professor at the University of Minnesota's School of Nursing and also holds a faculty appointment at the Early Bakken Center for Spirituality and Healing. Born and raised in Vietnam, Dr. Nguyen had training in economics and communication before receiving her PhD in social work from the University of Chicago in 2010, becoming the first person in post-war Vietnam with such a degree. Her research focused on understanding the root causes and treatment of mental suffering. Since 2010, she's been conducting research at Buddhist temples in Asia and training with different Buddhist masters. Welcome, Dr. Huong Nguyen.
Hello. Thank you so much, Mary Jo and Molly, for the wonderful introduction. And I am so happy. Let me adjust the view a little bit. So I'm so happy to talk to you today about mental well-being and my experience in Asia. This is actually, this is special because it's actually my first time talking about this, and there's so much information and I'm still in the process of processing them. And so today I hope to share some of the key lessons, and I actually call them lesson instead of findings. Because in terms of scientific findings, I'm still in the process of translating that into a language that would be understandable, but also into interventions. And so the talk today is more, the nature would be more of the sharing of the lessons that may be applicable to you in your work and life as well. And I hope it's helpful to at least some of you. So I will start sharing the screen now. So the topic of my talk is an introduction to mental well-being, lesson from the years in Asia. And so this is a photo of the temple in Vietnam where I stayed for 4 or 5 summers. So one of the things that I learned at the temple is that whenever we have a meeting of a lot of people, my teacher always said that there are 2 types of meetings. Whether you meet students in classroom or anywhere, or any kinds of meeting, there are 2 types. One type is a meeting of karma, where everyone brings their own karma. And in simple terms, karma is just baggage, right? We normally here in the US, we use the term baggage. So there's a type of meeting where everyone bring their own karma or baggage to the meeting and unload onto each other. And for that kind of meeting, we know that everyone will suffer. And then the second type of meeting is where, I'm not sure why it's not moving. I'll try again. Okay, sorry about that. So the second type of meeting is a meeting of merits or of goodness, where everyone bring their goodness and fortune together to create even more goodness and fortune. So when I was at the temple, whenever I met some of my teacher together with other people, they always start by saying that, may our meeting today is a meeting of joy, and may we create more joy to ourselves and the world. So that's what I would also want to start with our meeting today. I hope that wherever you are, I've seen that many of you are from Minnesota, but from elsewhere. And I hope that our meeting today will be a meeting of joy, and that we bring goodness and fortune together to create more goodness. And if there happen to be any negativity among us, for whatever reason, even when we don't know or not aware of or not remember, then may we forgive each other so that we can move forward in joy. And so now, with having said that, I hope you can now breathe and relax, and we will start the talk. And so the outline of the talk today, I will share a little bit about my background. Then I will talk about 10 years in Asia. So in Mary Jo in introduction, she mentioned the 4 years since 1918, but actually I've been doing this work for 10 years. And then I will share the 3 key lessons during the years of the temple, and then there'll be a conclusion about how can we move forward with mental well-being for all. And finally, there will be time for question and answer. So a little bit about my background, the background to my research and life in inquiry. So I was born and raised in North Vietnam after the Vietnam War. And at that time, nearly 70% of people were poor. So growing up, I actually experienced the lack of food, clean water, electricity, medicine, and education. I remember when I was growing up, we only had, for example, electricity for about 2 nights each week. And then it increased for 5 nights and then the whole week. So I was experiencing that. Growing up, I always wanted to have a life in which I would work in community development. But because social work was not even a concept in Vietnam. So when I went to college in the 1990s, I did my undergrad in economics. And after that, I came to the US and did my first master's degree in mass media at the University of Nebraska. And in the US, then I discovered social work. And when I discovered social work, I went to Chicago and did my PhD in social work. And when I graduated in 2010, as Mary Jo also mentioned, I became the first person in post-war Vietnam with a PhD in social work. But the year 2010, when I graduated, was also a turning point for me. There were 2 incidents, and I don't think I have time to go in depth into these incidents. But let's mention one. I was getting divorced. It was a very friendly divorce, but it still left me with a lot of sadness. And then the second incident, which I will also not go into detail for now, but if you have a question, we can talk about that later. This incident, I call it the meeting of a ghost at night. So basically, one night in 2010, I woke up in the middle of the night and I had an encounter for the first time in my life, which at that point, I could only classify it as running into a ghost for what I knew at that point as ghost, or I assume as ghost. So I'm not going to go into detail about what on that, but for 2 years after these incidents, I was in the state of very, very deep fear. And the wound was the normal wound that I knew up to that point was unshaken. And I was in very, very deep fears to the point where I could not go to sleep without the light turned on. And there was other thing as well. But because of that, and because I was trained in social work, so I asked, either I was going crazy, right? There was really something with me. I had a mental disorder or something, or there was more to what I have been seeing and experiencing in my existence. And so that thought and that question started me to return to Vietnam and to Asia, to enter the temple, to start learning. Because, long story, but Buddhism is all about knowing your mind, knowing yourself, and therefore knowing the world. So between 2010 and 2018, I was faculty at San Jose State University and then University of South Carolina. I was on tenure track at that point, and then by 2018, I got tenure. But during this time, every summer I would return to Vietnam, either Vietnam or Thailand, and I would stay either a few weeks to 3 months at a Buddhist temple. And by 2018, right after I got tenure, everything I've learned during these 3 months each year at the temple had accumulated to the point where I felt like I really need to be full-time at the temple, and nothing is more important for me at that time than really finding out about suffering, about the root cause of suffering, and about how to treat it. And at that point, when I came to the temple and decided that I'm going to resign from tenure and move to a temple, I strongly believe that there is a way, there must be, and there is a way to really take care once for all on the suffering, which we call mental disorder or some other way, but let's just say suffering in the world and for everyone. I strongly believe that. And so I resigned from tenure, and I shifted. I actually resigned from tenure. I wanted to quit, but they were convincing that I shouldn't do that. They were very kind friends and people who convinced me and helped me. So I shifted to the research track. I became a research professor, and then I moved to the temple. I took 1 year leave without pay first, and then I moved to the temple in Thailand, and I had stayed since then. So during these years, I also conducted 5 studies about mental health. Some of that was funded by NIH. I surveyed and interviewed hundreds of mental health patients, their families, mental health professionals, and Buddhist monks. I observed many treatment sessions offered by Buddhist temple to people with mental health problems, including what we would call exorcism sessions. So when I was staying at the temple in Vietnam, I would sleep. I got up every day at 4 in the morning, and I stay in a room together with these resident patients. I would sleep every night next to them, these people who were considered, the doctors would say that they had schizophrenia or has hallucination, but in normal term, they would be sometimes considered being possessed and haunted, meaning that ghost, if that exists, right, reside in them or with them. And I would be sleeping next to these people. So I observe a lot of the treatment session and helping at the temple. I also observe treatment at mental health facilities in Vietnam. I had 1,000 pages of field notes, but in this talk, I will focus on key lessons about mental well-being that I learned during the time I stayed at Buddhist temple, and it's especially the last 4 years since 2018 when I stayed full-time at the temple in Thailand. So before I started talking about the lesson, I want to give you a picture of what my life is like at the temple in Thailand. So this temple in Thailand is in a remote mountainous area in northeast Thailand, near the border with Laos. And in the temple, there's at any time during the year, depending whether or not it's a retreat season or it's a normal time, there can be 500 to 800 monks, nuns, and lay people live together in a very large area in the nature. So we have forest, we have the many lakes, we have a mountain, and we have rice field as well in a large area called the temple. And most people live in simple huts or houses throughout the temple. I'm gonna talk about the practice of the temple in a little bit, but I just want to make sure that when I came to the temple, I actually expected to learn meditation and on that. But at the temple, there was no meditation, there was no chanting, there was no donation box, there was no bowing, no sutra, no ritual that I was familiar with in Vietnam or elsewhere. And when I came to the temple, then I was given a 20-feet shipping container, which is about 160 square feet, as my living space. I had no kitchen, I had no sitting room, no dining room. And in the temple, all electricity was produced by solar cell. So we normally have only 2 hours in the evening from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. with power. Other than that, we did not. And we had solar cells. So a lot of time, especially during rainy season, I did not have enough electricity even for lighting. But over the years, and I started to extend the container, and then I built my kitchen and sitting room and dining room, and now I sort of have a house in the temple. But in the beginning, I live in a very simple manner, and other people, the monks and nuns in the temple, live in even simpler arrangement than me. In terms of food, then the food was provided by the temple once a day in the morning, and this is Thai food, so naturally it's very spicy for me. I had a few for clothes. I was just wearing brown, and I had a few set of outfit, and that's it. And so the routine for me at the temple in the last few years has been that I get up about 5 a.m. in the morning to get ready to go to the morning Dharma talk. Then around 6 a.m., the main temple master will give the Dharma talk. After the Dharma talk, then all of us will line up to get food. There'll be 4 lines, 1 for monk, 1 for nun, and 2 for lay people. And then we had lunch at 11 a.m. Monks and most of monks and nuns only eat lunch, and that's it. They don't have dinner. They may have some juice, but not something that we have to chew. I do have dinner. At 5 p.m., then we have the afternoon Dharma session, which is a replay of the morning talk. So people would get together near the main hall, and then there would be the replay of the morning talk. And then in the evening, there would be more informal Dharma sessions, or we walk with the master because the temple is very large. So a lot of time we just walk from the main hall to the gate, which is about maybe nearly a mile, and walk back. And we talk during that time as well. And then sometime we practice all night until dawn. All of us get together in the Dharma hall, and we just sit, walk, stand, talk, and we do it all night. So what is the practice? The practice is for you to, expressing yourself, this body and mind, which we already have, in the way that we call in the naturally unattached way, in the way of unattached to anything on the phenomenal inside or phenomenal outside, unattached and free from all. And then by that freedom, we share out that natural, that energy, for lack of a better word. We have a word which is anupap, and we have many other terms, and I'm still trying to see how I can use some of these terms in a more normal, in the ways that it's understandable outside of the temple. So we just basically, the practice is for this body and mind that we all have to return to its, or to reveal its natural state before any fabrication or any outfit or any label, any identity, anything that has been added onto it. And so I will get to that soon in where I talk about the lessons. So, but back to the life at the temple, other than these routines, everybody is on their own. We have in the kitchen, in the garden, in the garbage side, at the gate, we do sweeping of the temple. We also build roads and build houses, and we build Dharma halls, and we do everything ourselves, the monks and nuns and the lay people in the temple. And we are actually a very self-sufficient community in the sense that we grow our own rice and vegetable. We have a tiny, also simple clinic to take care when people get sick as well. And if somebody die, then if somebody die in the morning, we say, yes, so let's say, for example, Ajahn A just died, and then people, the monk will just put a pile of wood, and then we burn the body in the afternoon, and that's it. There's no crying or any ritual. It's a very, very simple life. So we try, the arrangement is that from we have children in the temple as well. So the arrangement is that from the moment you are born or you come into form to on the moment that you experience or you go through that existence, that form express itself as body and mental state, and express itself every day in terms of sitting, walking, standing, lying down, working, doing anything, to the expression of sickness and pain, what we call sickness and pain. It's just expression of this existence, and to death. It's one flow of freedom where there is no stopping, or clashing, or there is no moment in which there is grabbing attachment that cause suffering. It's just one flow of freedom. And so the community was built that way. And so these are just some photos of, I will quickly go to some photos of the temple for you to get an idea of what my life was like at the temple. And this is where I stayed. This is a container. When I first came, the roof was on torn, and the weather in Thailand was very hot. Normally it easily got to 100-degree F. And so it was very hot in the container. A lot of time it felt like I was in the oven. And so I wash my clothes every day and hang them. And so over time, later the monk came and helped me to put up a roof so that it would not be too hot anymore. And so now I will get to the main part of my talk, which is about the lessons that I learned regarding mental well-being during the years at the temple. So I had come to the temple trying to understand, first of all, my fear, my suffering, understanding the mind, the root cause of mental disorder, and how to treat mental disorder. So when I first came to the temple, I had a lot of questions in my mind, but everybody told me, no need to ask, no need to ask. And that really frustrated me. I wanted to ask, but I couldn't ask. And everybody just say, oh, no need to ask. Any moments that I have a question, they just say, oh, no need to ask. And so I was always thinking and observing and questioning and answer the question myself with on the observing. But the question kept running inside. And then one day I realized that, and during the first few months, a lot of time I walked in the temple and I cried. because there was too much clashing. There was too much clashing about what I used to being in the US, being as a professor in the US, being whatever. But everything that had become me up to the moment I came to the temple, and then all the phenomena outside and inside at the temple, there was too much clashing. And simple thing as I saw bowing in the temple in Thailand, when you meet a monk, you have to go down on the master, you have to go down and you bow with your head touching the floor. And the first time I saw that, I had problem with that as well, because in Vietnam, we didn't do that. When you saw a monk, you just put your hand together and you just bow lightly, but you don't have to go down on the floor. And I always believed before that you only did that to the Buddha. And so that also I had problems. So there were that's just an example, but there was too many clashing. And when I wanted to ask, everybody tell me, oh, no need to ask. So I was just upset, disappointed, furious inside. And then one day I realized I was unhappy, not because I did not have the answer, but because I thought I must have an answer. Now, this may be simple, but it also showed me, simply speaking, it also showed me when I look deeply into that, I realized further that the whole expression of me, when I came to the temple, I thought that I have these questions, I have these fears, I have this and I have that, and I have this mental state that I need to take care of. I have some other mental states that I don't need to take care of. For example, if I'm happy, I don't need to take care of being happy, but I have sadness. I need to take care of my sadness. I have fear. I need to take care of fear. But when I came to the temple, then the first thing I realized is that the whole expression of me, what is me in every single moment, is this constant I must have, I think, I believe, I feel, I want, I like. And it flows like that. I always assume that there's me, and then I have what I want or I don't want, my like and dislike, my belief as something else, my feeling, and I need to deal with these surface things. But me, that is unchanged. But when I came to the temple, the first thing I realized is that no, they're not separate. First of all, the whole expression of me in every single moment is this flow. The sort of the construction of that. And normally I call these my style, my way, my personality, my depth, my intelligence, but they were in fact fabrications, my twisted add-ons, to use some of the term in the temple, they call it add-ons, add-on to pure body mind and to phenomena. And they are my limit. So I do not have limits, but I am these limits. And these limits would cause clashing. And that would cause suffering. So I will take one example is my fear of darkness and ghost. So after I came and stayed at the temple for some time, I had one of my teachers. I actually have many teachers, which I don't have time to talk about them today. But one of my teachers asked me to practice something, which is that at midnight, I had to go to the site where they normally burn the bodies in darkness. And I had to go there. And I had to walk around that site, the cremation site. And he asked me to, and as I walked, he said that I could not use any tools. I could not use chanting. I could not use chanting the name of the Buddha. I could not think of any Dharma teaching. I could not, basically, I could not use any tools anymore to hold on to. I had to really, with all my eyes, ears, nose, mouth, tongue, body, and mind, just kind of come in the direct contact with darkness and could not think of the Buddha, could not think of teacher, could not think of anything, could not chant, could not use anything. And so, and he asked me to just let things unfold naturally, because only by that I can see the nature of things. So as I circle the cremation site, and in that cremation site, you can actually also see bones and stuff and ashes. And as I circle that, and when sounds came up, cracking of some animal walking, sounds came up, or there's light flashing by, or there's some smell suddenly come to my nose, or wind passed by my skin. And I just came in full contact with these things. And the more I walk around, and just that, and not using anything anymore to cover up, then I really see that darkness is just darkness. It's pure darkness, and it is the same substance as light. Now, I would walk around that same site in daylight and I would not have fear. But when I walk at darkness, because of my fabrication about what darkness means and goes and all that, then my fear come up. But the more I walk and just confront and see this process of how the fabricated mind actually created all these fears and suffering. And when I saw that darkness and light actually had the same substance, my fear went away. I had a lot of these trainings, which I don't have time to go into them today. But I'm just trying to say that one of the first lessons I came when I learned at the temple is that so far, I have been operating, and the whole expression of me is these fabrications. I do not have the fabrication and fears and all that, but I am the fabrication. So in Buddhism, they call this fabrication and limit karma, which a simple way of saying it would be habit and or baggage. So I is from Buddhist viewpoint, this whole expression I is a bundle of karma, or the bundle of physical and mental habits that we accumulate over time. And the title, the bundle, the more suffering that I will experience or display. So how do we deal with this fabricated mind, which is the source of suffering? Traditionally, this process of purifying or taming the mind is done through meditation and many methods. And traditionally, we locate that mind by simply saying that mind is where the contact is. So for example, now you are listening to me, your mind is at the listening. But if I ask you, how's your feet? Then your mind moves to the feet. So the mind, that fabricated mind, that running mind is where the contact is. And to tame or purify and calm the running mind, traditionally the monks would tie the mind to a single contact point. So for example, if they ask you to just breathe and focus on the breath, that means you focus on one single contact point right here of the breathing. Or you can do the beat chain, you count, and the contact with the beat, you keep your mind there at the contact. Or you chant the Buddha name, right? In Vietnam, in Asia, they do that a lot. They chant, for example, you know, Nam Hoa Di Đà Phật, Nam Hoa Di Đà Phật, Nam Hoa Di Đà Phật. So that you keep your mind at one contact point. Or you use mantra or the body as well. So when I came to the temple, I learned that in this era, in our time now, these methods can still work, but it's difficult for most people. The one thing that may still work is to keep the mind at the contact point with the body, which is why breathing can still kind of work. Or one of my teachers teach me a simple technique. If you want to calm your mind by keeping the contact, which is you just like with your finger here, you just touching and you do like this. Then you keep your mind at this contact point. And that will help you to calm the mind as well. But basically, it is still difficult to train and to train and unpack the running mind in the traditional way. So one thing that is helpful and effective in this time is forgiveness. And I feel like I'm already running out of time, even though I'm still going through the first lesson. But I will talk about forgiveness. So the first thing I learned about mental well-being, taking care of mental well-being at the temple, is forgiveness, which is used as a way of you burn the fabrication, the impurities, and you unpack the physical and mental habits from inside out. So what I would do is every day I would see how this I, this me, express itself as a physical and mental habit. And then whenever I see that habit, which means that the clashing, the ways that I have become, I have a bundle up, then I would say a forgiveness statement to unwind or remove it. So let's say, for example, I see that I tend to have, we all have the same 2 eyes, 2 ears, right? Mouth, nose to smell, tongue and body to touch, and hand, 2 hands and 2 legs. We all have the same, but the way we look is different. So when I see it's this way of looking that has become, that dictate me, and it also causes the clashing and the suffering, then I start to unpack that way. If it's not the pure way of looking, then I would remove everything that is unpure by asking for forgiveness. So for example, and I ask you for the moment now, you can try to do that with me as well. So for example, every day, twice a day, at least twice a day in the morning and in the evening before I go to bed, I would sit and I would feel how this I is express itself, or something that come up inside, or during the day as I walk, as I sit, I see how I talk, how I see, how I hear, how I listen, and on that. And if there's something I would say, for example, I humbly asked to be forgiven for any time I have used my eyes in the way that hurt and harm others, through looking, through watching, through observing, or any action of the eye that may kill. You know, we often say a look that kill, that stab, that threaten, that abuse, or even seduce, provoke, or alienate. Any way of seeing and using the eye that is not pure, I humbly has to be forgiven for that. So I do that with everything. I ask to be forgiven for any ways that I use my eye to look in an impure way that hurt and harm others. Anytime I use my hearing, listen in the way that hurt and harm others. Anytime that I use my body, I use my hand that hurt and harm others. Anytime the way I speak, I talk that hurt and harm others. By gossiping or by any way, by anything, even by praising or saying sweet words that bind people, that make people attached to me, I also ask to be forgiven for that. So either negative, not just negative way, but positive way. If it's impure, I ask to be forgiven for that. So I ask to be forgiven and cleanse all the habits of this body, the ways I use this body, and also the mental habit, the particular ways that I tend to take in information, analyze, or recall, or doubt, or form opinion, or judge, or things like that. Then I also ask for forgiveness about family and relationships as well. I think of my mother, for example. If there's a particular way that I relate to my mother, then I would think about that, and I humbly asked to be forgiven for this way of relating to my mother. And I would describe that very detailed in the way that I relate to her, because it's not just that I have that, but I am that, and that also be where the suffering is. So I do that, and I cleanse, and I do forgiveness for own family and relationship, to at work as well, for my ex-husband. And I do forgiveness about past trauma, about the moment I also experienced ghost. I did forgiveness for all the places and locations I once lived. So for example, I would sit and I think about all the places from the moment I was born in a small town in Vietnam. I went to college in Hanoi. I went to Omaha and Chicago and all these places. I thought about all of that. And anytime when I thought of them, if there was still lingering feelings or sadness or tension or heaviness, then I looked directly into that point and I asked to be forgiven for that. So I don't also do that to animal, nature, the earth, society, and the entire universe. So I asked to be forgiven, and I also said that if anybody or anything, anytime have done anything to hurt and harm me, I also forgive them. I give unconditional forgiveness to them. So now I move to lesson number 2. So after I practice this forgiveness for every day for some time, I felt very light. And for about 2-3 months, every day I felt I had attained something very special. Like, ooh, when I sit there with just so much light and empty and calmness and this and that, it's very special. But every time, every day when I felt, oh, this is it. This is so special. This is like, peace and calmness and whatever, or nirvana. I even thought it was nirvana. The next day, something else would happen. And then I would feel, oh no, yesterday was not special. Today is it. Today is really special. And for 2-3 months, it was like that. And I up. I went up in terms of the mind. So before I was dealing with all the negative stuff. And now the negative stuff was taken care of. And I came to all the positive stuff. But even positive stuff, I realized state of mind, it was impermanent. It changed all the time until this special positive state was also not special. And I saw them as truly impermanent. And then one time for about 1 month straight, my mind felt unmoved. It did not move at all. It was undisturbed. And I wait very patiently to ask the teacher, what was it? Did I attain something special yet? And then he scolded me that I waste his time for a stupid question and make him missing watching his boxing game. And so that broke me out of that as well. So the second lesson is that as long as still an I composing or dealing with mental state, before I was dealing with negative and now with positive, or even the empty state, empty or unmoved state, there was still suffering. You cannot deal with the fabricated mind at all. So now I will quickly go through this because actually this is the core of what I wanted to tell you, to talk today. So I wanted you to see this one, to this picture, this arrow. And now you see this arrow. When you see this arrow, from the other arrow to this arrow, did the seeing went from upward to downward? The arrow went downward this way, but did the seeing went downward? And now, does that thing which see become bent like this yet? Does it become bent? The arrow become bent, but the thing which see, does it become bent? And now, does that thing smell like pumpkin pie? Or does it taste pumpkin pie? Or does it become latte? That which sees. And now you see this picture. That which see, does it become white or black or half black and white? And now is that burning? Does it become fire? Is that burning? Can it get old? The seeing, that which see. Can it get wrinkled at all? Or does it get sleepy at all? Does it get still? Is it peaceful? That which see, it's actually even beyond peaceful or still. It has nothing to do even with being peaceful or still. So one day when I was sitting in the Dharma hall with the teacher, before I was always composing my mind, trying to get to some state. And one day when I was sitting in the Dharma hall with the teacher, I experienced something. It was like for lack of a better word, it was like a collapsing rather than achieving something. So if you have noticed that thing, you will see that, for lack of a better word, I will call that true mind. With any side image or vision, that true mind doesn't become black, white, yellow, dark, light, beautiful or ugly, young or old. With any sounds that come, that true mind also doesn't become sweet or sour, bitter, up or down with them, with the words. It doesn't change with smell. It has nothing to do with that. Even with thoughts, the true mind doesn't become the thought. The thought may appear and disappear, but it cannot contaminate that true mind. Same with emotion, memory, perception, rationale, insights, even meditative state. When people practice and get into meditative state or samadhi, all of that cannot contaminate. It's still on the surface and it has nothing to do with this true mind. But and like the empty space, this true mind is without a substance, without a cell, and it is free from all. It's not young or old, male or female, Vietnamese or American, Christian or Buddhist. It's not even Buddhist. This true empty mind. It cannot get sick or have pain, and it is truly free of all suffering. And when you realize this, you will also realize that everyone is true, free of suffering mind, and because of this, everyone is truly equal and pure. So I feel like I'm running out of time already, so I will fast forward this. Lesson number 3 is very easy, which is that happy mind is giving mind. And one key thing I learned at the temple is that I will skip this one. But in this picture here, which is about ox herding, which is also about training the mind and becoming, achieving mental well-being. So you will see that one photo here is empty circle. So even when you realize this emptiness, the next 2 photo is about one, then you see the true nature of everything. Everything is pure. Everything is one. And even though we express in diversity, it's still that same pure oneness. And then the last picture is actually about going to the market, which means that first you suffer from the world, you leave the world, you go up the mountain, you sit there, you practice. When you realize the truth, then you come back down into the world to help the world. So lesson number 3 is that if we want to have mental well-being, giving is important. So I will not, all happy minds are giving mind, and giving is both the means toward well-being and also an outcome of well-being. So I think I will maybe skip this part because we don't have time anymore. This is the picture of the monks at the temple. We do gardening together. This is me when I stay at the temple in Vietnam, and I I taught English to the monks and the village people. I can skip this part of also, which is an unexpected lesson about giving. When I came to the temple, after some time, my life turned into feeding and helping about 30 or 40 cats and kittens at a time, even though before that I never cared to pets. And then I also have dogs and birds and snakes and rats and scorpion and spider and all of them, and they don't feel the same to me. So the point is giving is very important. So today I have talked to you about 3 things that I learned in order to maintain and achieve, for lack of a better word, long-lasting mental well-being. I talk about forgiveness. I talk about giving, but the most important thing that I've learned at the temple is we have to really pass that fabricated mind to realize the true mind. And mental health treatment so far has always been dealing with this fabricated mind. One way or another, the way I see, we've always been managing or dealing or relating from negative to positive, trying to maintain the positive or relate to positive in the non-judgment way or something, but there is still an I involved in that, and we're still doing a lot with the fabricated mind. When in fact, the way that I see is that we have to move past that in order to have long-lasting mental well-being. So I will stop here to give people a chance to ask questions.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Huong Nguyen, for that very interesting presentation. And you did a beautiful time getting through your slides. We have a few questions. One person asks, how can one identify impurities versus just being human?
Well, excellent question. And first of all, thank you so much. I have to rush through on the slides, but I will send the slide for you so that maybe it will provide more context. So from Buddhist viewpoint, when we are born, there is a reason we are born as human instead of being born as animal or being born as something else. Also, there is a reason that I was born in Vietnam instead of in the US. So what makes you born as human and where you are born and into what family, that come with karma and baggage. So inherently, there's an impurity embedded in that. Now, so there will be embedded impurity in that being as human, because even with the conception between our mother and father, it is a very elaborate teaching about this, and I actually experienced that myself, but I would not have time to go into that today. So we will come with some of that already when we are born as human. So even for people who are considered reincarnation, right? Like the Dalai Lama or other who are considered reincarnation, when we come into the human form, there's certain level of endowments, right? That we come with. And but even when we're born as human, then you will see that. And what I learned is we all have the same 2 eyes, 2 ears, and the body and hand, but the inside is different. And so when the inside is different, and this is about purifying, right? Some of us, and I hope this doesn't sound weird or wrong when it comes out, but even inside the human form, some of us may have more the mind of a beast, right? Sometimes we see people who kill and we say he's more like a beast. But also inside this body, there would be people we would call bodhisattva, who are givers to the world. There would be people who are more like a saint or noble. And so what dictate within this we are all just like 200 pounds, 150 pounds. But what dictates the differences among us is that is the limit inside or the fabrication or the bundle up. So the more bundle and the tighter the bundle inside, the more impurity, then the more suffering and the more limited. But the less and less limit, the fewer the limit, or the more we expand until we are unlimited. And this is what those who do not have limits, also meaning those who do not have habits. They can still function and use the body and mind, but they are not attached. So when there's no attachment, that's not called habit, then they're free, then their mind is free, then they can embrace all. And that is within the human body, but there's less of the human. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much. There's many more questions, but I think this is the last one there'll be time to ask you. And this seems like such a big question to ask. And you have only like a minute or two to answer this question. But the question is, how does one end suffering, or is life the cause of suffering?
Well, that's one way of thinking. But so what I learned eventually is, today I try to point, for like a better word, I point out to the true mind, but that is only the starting point. Okay, so even when you see that, but when you stay in the true mind, the thing is, when you stay with the true mind, with that, when you look back, things that manifest as suffering will still be there, but they are no longer suffering to you. So first of all, we have to reconceptualize suffering, meaning that even for people who are enlightened, that doesn't mean they don't have sickness anymore, or they don't experience pain, right? It's still there, but it's not seen as suffering anymore. They do not suffer in the mind because there's no mind or no I for that to attack or clash anymore. But the natural process when we are born as human, on these will still happen to us. But also in that you experience everything, you know, on duality will still be pure in itself, and nothing actually say itself as anything. The suffering doesn't call itself suffering. We call it suffering. So light or dark, right? Nighttime or sunlight, day or night. Everything doesn't call itself anything. It's pure in itself. The same with the body. Or even when you experience swelling or death, or the symptoms are there, but they are pure in themselves.
So we put on the labels.
We put on the label.
We put on the labels.
We put on the labels.
Well, Dr. Nguyen, I think we're going to have to stop there.
Okay.
I really encourage you to take a look at the chat. I ask people to put in the chat what's one learning they take away from today, and it's really inspiring. It's clear that you touched many people's hearts, minds, and spirits. So thank you so much for your talk today and for being with us. I want to also acknowledge and thank all of our staff at the Bakken Center who helped make today's webinar possible. And we hope that you'll join us for our Wellbeing lecture on November 3rd, featuring Dr. Monica Sharma. It focuses on ethical, transformational leadership. So thanks all for being with us today, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you. And I wish everyone a happy day and many happy days ahead. Thank you.